Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Claire Llewellin-Davis, Managing Director of the Lensbury, known as London's Riverside Resort. Coming up on today's show, Claire tells us an unenviable skill she learned in the army.
I didn't know I could stay awake for 56 hours.
Phil marvels at one of Claire's stories. What a marvellous story, what a marvellous story it is. And Claire recounts an unexpected outcome from an event.
And I wasn't expecting it to be headlines on national papers.
All that and so much more as Claire chats us through her epic story so far. Claire's story is properly epic, easily summarised by this soundbite from my good self. Oh, yes! So I'd be forever grateful if you can hit that subscribe button and tell everyone you know. Enjoy! And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Claire Llewellin-Davis.
Good morning. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
How are you?
Really well, thank you.
Good stuff. Yes. Are you? Where are you? Are you actually? Well, actually, before I get into where are you, just tell the world who you are and what you do.
Okay. So as you heard, my name is Claire Llewellin-Davis. I am the managing director of the beautiful Lensbury Resort. This is a resort for those that don't know it or haven't heard of it. It's 25 acres. It sits on the River Thames between Kingston and Twickenham, so we're just by Teddington. It's a role I came on board in July 2022. Yeah, an absolute delight to be here.
Yeah, and we'll get into the Lensbury in a lot more detail as we get into the fullness of the discussion, because it's gone through quite the change. I think in its lifetime. So we'll get the history around that and actually your direction of travel later in the show. But actually, before we get into that, let's just go all the way back to the beginning. Now, I was frankly, I suppose this is the joy of doing this show, and rightly or wrongly, I hadn't heard of you before. One of your people reached out to me to see if we'd be interested in having you on. And a quick look at your background, and I was like, oh, yes. Yes. So, yeah, before you got into hospitality, there's a bit of a career before that by the looks of things as well. So maybe you could just kind of take us all the way back to how did you get your start in life? What happened?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's been a life of many chapters. I'm a big believer, I think, in doing what you love, and what's the saying is what's for you won't go by you. I've always loved people. I think I'm very natural in the hospitality industry. So I did languages at university, perhaps already not a natural way into hospitality. Did languages at university, went to live in Japan for a year. Then I went into the city for a couple of years.
What's the objective by studying languages? This is quite an interesting one, actually, in terms of you go to do that for what purpose? What is the goal at that time of your life?
I think not knowing perhaps at the time exactly what I want to do. I think languages keeps all doors open. You know, I think it's the joy of a language. I always feel is you get to understand another culture from the inside, if you like, and I always think that's a real privilege. And for me, choosing languages, again, I suppose it was a natural course from school, and it kept many doors open, so I could still go in many different directions, not being entirely sure at that time kind of what that direction was.
Yeah.
It also was a 4-year degree course with a year out in France and Germany, so that has to be attractive. So
that'll do it.
That's the route I went. yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So sorry, I cut you off. You went off to Japan.
So I went off to Japan, did an incredible year in Japan, working for the Japanese exchange and teaching program for the Japanese embassy out there. And then I came back and thought I was missing out on this great career in the city. So I went to work for a big global law firm using my languages, which was really nice for Linklaters as it was at the time. And then I was in the officer training course, so CCF at school and officer training corps at university. And I was invited to a ball over in Germany while I was working in London. And I learned at that point that the age for officers had gone up from 25 to 29, and I was just on the cusp of coming up. So I think I was about 24 at the time, and just I guess an alarm went off in my head, and thought, right, that's my calling. I really see. I did. So as I said, I did OTC at university. So with that, I came back and I went to the careers office on the Strand, and they weren't quite sure what to do with me. And they said, right, okay, well, if you're serious about this, then we will send you to go on you have to go on like a 3-day assessment centre. So within a week, I was lined up to go to the assessment centre, went to the assessment centre, and they were like, green light to go, we're ready to take you to Sandhurst. So it was like a very quick decision and a quick switch from being in the city to going to Sandhurst. So then,
Not half.
yes, yes. I was kind of, I suppose, one of the first intake of being slightly older, I guess, and Sandhurst is brilliant. But I guess when you're a little bit older, you are already a little bit, you're who you are. And I think maybe there's a slight kind of, we're going to rebuild you and make you who we want you to be. So I think it's just learning to play the game a little bit, if you like, through that year at Sandhurst.
Yeah.
But what a year it was.
That's very interesting, actually, because that's a really good point you make around, I suppose the older you get, the more, I don't want to say stuck in your ways you get, but certainly you, as you say, you're beginning to know who you are and you're beginning to understand your identity. And if their process is that effectively, everyone starts on a level playing field, I would imagine, and you've got to park everything at the door and get stripped right back. But I
Yeah,
suppose you've then also got the maturity to understand that, well, I need to do what I need to do to ensure that I pass and I move forward.
exactly that. And unfortunately, we had a couple of officers that have come through the ranks, officer cadets that come through the ranks, and they are brilliant, absolutely brilliant to be able to come through the ranks and go to Sandhurst. And we were like, a few of us were slightly older, like, is the army really like this? Like, no, this is just Sandhurst. This is just to make sure that you're coming out and you're thoroughly tested in every which way. But don't worry, the regular army isn't like this. It's actually really enjoyable. So it's like, right, we take that with a bit of faith, and as you say, you kind of just, with your experience, just kind of play the game and do what you need to do to get through that year. But yeah, it was an incredible year, and I think what the military gives you many skills. But I didn't know I could stay awake for 56 hours. That's something I learned from Sandhurst. It's not something I'm perhaps going to need in my life, but when I'm working long hours, I can say to myself, well, Claire, come on, remember those days back in the military, remember that sleep deprivation exercise.
My life. Yeah. So describe that then in terms of that. Sorry, I'm just going to hone in on this because one, as somebody who loves his sleep more than probably anything else in the world, sleep deprivation is something that I know that I definitely don't operate at my optimum if I'm not in my routine. So what happens to you in the moments when you're at hour 55 of this 56-hour stint?
Well, that particular exercise is kind of infamous. There are a series of kind of different exercises that you have to kind of get through Sandhurst, and they all kind of test different things. And this particular exercise, you basically had to dig a trench, and then you go into like an NBC attack. So you're in this trench, you're digging this trench, you then get attacked. So everybody's kind of in their dug trenches. You then get attacked. So there's firefights, and then they do an NBC phase. So that's a nuclear, biological, chemical phase. You then have to put on your NBC gear and your gas mask, and then we had to lead the exercise in our kit. So you are absolutely exhausted, and then you have to march out in your NBC kit, which is hot and heavy, and you're tired, and it's just an absolute test of your mettle and what you can endure. So I guess they keep you going because constantly things are thrown at you. So it's, I guess, adrenaline kicks in, and you dig deep and see your way through that. But yeah, we were hallucinating. At the end, I'm not sure we would have been in a great state to have a proper full blown attack. But yeah,
Right.
you learn a lot through that kind of thing. And I guess that's the idea of Sandhurst, is just to make sure that in the toughest of circumstances that you've got what it takes to see you and your men through. I think another similar kind of memorable exercise that I've drawn on. So back to the NBC. So you have to be able to put your gas mask on in a gas attack, and one of the exercises that they would do is they would put us in a gas chamber. That sounds really bad. It's basically tear gas, and we had to take our gas mask off, put it round, turn it, put it round your head and put it back on again. And you cannot panic, because if you panic, then you'll take a gasp of tear gas, and obviously that's basically the end of that exercise, because you're not then in a fit state. So you just have to stay very, very calm and remember to kind of twist your gas mask back on, and you'll be fine. But it's a proper just learning to stay calm under pressure. And I wonder if later life I kind of draw on that even subconsciously. It's like, just remember, when the going gets tough, you've just got to stay very, very calm and
remember where you have been before and what you're
remember where
capable of.
you have been, and draw on those experiences.
Yeah, I always remember the some of the advertising around, but when the army were advertising to take people on, and they do these really cool adverts, and then there's a tagline at the end, it's something like that: "It's a state of mind, you might have it." And I always remember watching that particular advert, going, I absolutely don't. I don't have that thing. But then you think to yourself, well, nobody really truly knows what they're capable of until they're pushed, right? And actually, we probably all surprise ourselves with what we're capable of.
Completely. And I think, in normal day-to-day life, when do you get that opportunity to really push yourself and see, right, what am I made of? Normally we don't. Maybe elite athletes, they get to that point and they can really see, what they're made of. But normally we don't. And I suppose that's the purpose of Sandhurst, is to put you into these very, very extreme conditions. So you've been tested, and with that you get so much confidence kind of in life and going forwards. And that's why I think the military is such a great grounding for kind of future success, if you like, because you come out of that a very confident person and kind of ready to take on the world. You feel you can do a lot. So that stands us in good stead going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did your career map out within the army then?
Yeah, I loved it. So I did 8 years in the army. I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan in my time. Both very, very interesting times to be out there. I guess Afghanistan was I did 6.5 months out in Afghanistan. That was an experience. I went out kind of to manage the supply chain. So regaining control of all the supplies out in theatre, I guess, because so much was coming in so quickly. I ended up then my SO2, so the major at the time who was running the fuel supply chain, I ended up then taking over from him. So at this point I'd specialised in food services. I guess I'd already had a bit of a leaning towards potentially that might be my future career. So I'd specialised as a food services officer, went out to Afghanistan and ended up taking over as the fuel officer. But that's the military. It's like you've got one skill, you can quickly adapt to another, you need to learn quite quickly. So then ended up kind of running the fuel supply chain out in Afghanistan until the next successor kind of came in, and I moved on to my next role.
Yeah, I'm already seeing quite a lot of similarities actually in terms of the army structure versus a hospitality structure, in terms of that adaptability that you need to have. And actually I talk about this not just on podcasts and things, but generally with kind of anybody that I come into contact with that wants to enter into a chat, is that I've believed for a very long time that we are very, very quick to define people by the jobs that they do. But in actual fact, that's really, really dangerous, because you then get self-defined as to that's who I am. But the minute that's taken away from you, if you don't feel that you can do anything else, it's quite a dangerous state of mind to get into. But it kind of comes back to your point around, I suppose, the tests that you're put through in these moments of training don't really kind of do you justice as to what you're fully capable of. And it's the same principle in here you are in the army, having done a job, and then you just literally transition into another job, because one, you probably don't have a choice, you just have to do it, and two, you just kind of go, well, let's just crack on, let's get on with it.
Yeah, completely. And I think attitude is key, and I think that's so true in later life. And I think when I'm recruiting for roles, it's it doesn't matter if you don't have exactly the right skill set, unless it's a very, very specific skill set that you need. For me, coming in, I'm always very open-minded when I look at people and I look at their CVs. I think, actually, what have you got that's transferable? And within those first kind of 30 seconds to a minute, I think, yeah, you're the kind of person that will be right for this role. And yes, we can bring you up to speed on this area or that area, but it's that willingness to learn, isn't it? And it's that attitude that's everything for me, certainly.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose bring us home from your army time. When did it start to become, I suppose, a moment in your mind where you were thinking, I'm going to have to start looking at something else?
Yeah. So I absolutely love my time. So after Afghanistan, then I went to go and be the adjutant of a unit over in Germany. And at that point, I was a very senior captain. I was about to promote to major, and I was about to reach what we call this kind of pension trap, and that's where you do your majors exams, and then you're going to be in for another 8 years because you're going to get your full pension, and that's a kind of normal. So I left it quite late till this point because I was really enjoying it, and I thought, actually, I'm not prepared to commit another 8 years of my life, and actually, I think I've got other areas I want to have a look at. So I left, quite unusual, I guess, as a very senior captain. And I tapped into a good friend of mine from school. Her dad used to place very, very senior military officers, brigadiers, generals. And she's like, well, Dad would be very happy to see you. And of course, I was a senior captain, but way below the normal kind of people that he would place. So I went to see him. He was a lovely man. And he's like, well, Claire, I'm not really sure what to advise you, but I do recommend just have a look at the Sunday Times exec appointments. And I think it was literally that weekend I bought the Sunday Times, and there was the job at Hurlingham, which is a beautiful private members club, and it just jumped out of the page at me, and I was like, gosh, it's meant to be. So I did my research on Hurlingham, thought that's a world. At that time it was a membership and events role, and I thought, yeah, that's my background, I've got a lot to give. I did my research. Turns out that the CEO was a rear admiral, so I was like, brilliant, he understands the services background. And I cold called him from Germany. And in hindsight, it's like, that's just so audacious to do that. And he was blown away. He was like, nobody has contacted me. You're the first person. I was like, this is me. Here I am. I'd love to come and meet you. And I guess I knew at that time I would never fit the classic boxes that the recruitment agencies are going to be after. I would just get put into that kind of not relevant pile. So I thought, let me just go in and call him. And so I arranged to meet him and had a look around Hurlingham. And anyway, to a long story short, I ended up then, my kind of next role was at Hurlingham, and that started my love then for private members clubs, and I entered the world of private members clubs, and it was like I've absolutely found my calling and found my niche. And so I started in Hurlingham in 2009, and then at that time the Club Managers Association of Europe was becoming a much more widely recognised body. The club certified club managers qualification is a very, very big in America, but the team in the UK are doing a great job to make it a proper certified recognition here in the UK. So I got my CCM qualification, and so that then I did my 9 years at Hurlingham. I had a brilliant time, just felt I was ready for the next step. And my husband and I had a bit of a challenge. We said, right, which one of us is going to find a job overseas? And I was quite determined. And I saw this brilliant job.
Challenge I can get on board with.
We like a challenge.
Yeah.
You're sensing that. So lo and behold, then I found a great role with the Hong Kong Jockey Club over in Hong Kong as the GM of essentially of their National Equestrian Centre. So we pulled the plug on the UK, and a very lovely, safe life to take. We had a young family at the time, to take the family overseas and go and have a few years of adventure.
Yeah, wow. Right. Well, before we get stuck into that chapter, I'm going to just rewind you. I think it's wonderful that you've kind of highlighted that boldness of picking up the phone, right? Because this is something that I'm also a benefactor of, luck or whatever it is. But you kind of, I remember way back at the beginning of my career being so nervous to call an HR department about anything because 20 years old, no real amazing life experience or whatever. But I really, really wanted a job on a cruise ship. I was kind of really single-mindedly focused around that. and everybody had told me you're going to really struggle because they need to see X amount of experience and all of that kind of stuff. And so I think it was actually my dad that said to me, you've got to then figure out what your unique selling point is going to be. And who'd have thought that actually picking up the phone and entering into a conversation with somebody would be the unique selling point? And was lucky enough to get put through to the head of HR for the whole of P&O Cruises. And
Amazing.
and
Yeah.
2 days, we just had a half-hour chat about life. It wasn't even really an interview. And two days later, I got an invite to a formal interview, and then went through the formal interview process and got the job. And I always highlight that in my own story as a really, really pivotal moment, is that, yes, it was uncomfortable for me to do that in that moment. But think of the choice if you don't do that. It's kind of, and highlighting that in your own journey as well, I think I also love the fact that this happens so often in all of the conversations I have on this show. Such a sliding doors moment, isn't it? That you pick up that
Absolutely.
particular
Yeah.
edition of the Sunday Times, and if that job's not there, you're, it's
Completely, right? Kind
unbelievable.
of, you make your own luck. I'm a believer in that, but it's, there's a little bit of help there somewhere, isn't there? It's like
For
just
sure. Yes.
the stars aligned. And had I not met my friend's dad, who knows what I'd be doing? I'm sure I'd probably end up in hospitality because I think it's a natural calling. But yeah, very, very interesting. And it was interesting, with that. So I was then kind of trying to keep the recruitment agency informed as well, because I don't want to upset them, because they could be useful in later life. So it's like, then kind of trying to juggle going directly and just keeping them abreast of what's happening. They're like, Claire, this is, it's a little bit unorthodox. It's like, yeah, sorry about that, but it's competitive. It's a competitive market, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
other thing that I just wanted to, and this comes from your notes actually, is that you had a wonderful story from your time at the Hurlingham Club. If you're prepared to share that one.
So I love Hurlingham, and I think I probably still bleed a little bit of Hurlingham. But so I was running the events there, and I guess back to the military days, it's kind of be the best, and it's such a premium, beautiful private members club. It's like, right, I really want to just put some brilliant events on there and bring in some very, very high profile speakers. We kind of ran a series of Speaker of the Years, and one of the events that I did was, again, I was reading the Times. There's a bit of a theme here, and there was a really good article about Cherie Blair's Foundation for Women. I thought, gosh, actually, people may be undecided about her, but what a brilliant, she's such a brilliant lady, and what a great speaker she would be. So I ran it by the chief executive at the time, and the chairman of the club, and the chairman of house. There's lots of committees at Hurlingham, just to make sure everybody was on board. And I reached out to her chamber. She said she'd be delighted to come. She was like, fantastic, what a fantastic speaker for us. And I thought, well, she could touch on the Downing Street years, and then, talk about her Foundation for Women, and we'd raise money for her charity. And it's be a really good, really interesting evening for the Hurlingham members.
Mm.
I hadn't realised I'd clearly stepped on a bit of a landmine there, and there was absolute uproar about, I think she was of a different political persuasion, shall we say, to a traditional speaker at Hurlingham. And my poor CEO at the time got lots of complaint letters in, and I had my usual marketing around the club, and there were calls for protests to be on the night of the event that she was there. I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And my chairman of house was like, Claire, are you sure about this? But the chairman of the club, he was like, Claire, this is brilliant. You have shaken Hurlingham to its core. This is brilliant. You've really given us something to think about and talk about, and it's absolutely fantastic. And he was wholeheartedly behind this event. Of course, when we put the tickets on sale, sold out within 2 days. It's like, well, that says everything. I've just had to hope that it was the right people coming for the right reasons. But she had her private security, and so I obviously had my military background. It's like, right, well, we have security on at the event, we're doing bag searches, we make sure we've got a quick getaway, we've got an exit route for her, in case it goes a little bit unsavoury. But this is Hurlingham, so it's not going to go that unsavoury.
Yeah,
surely.
it could be verbally unsavoury, but probably not physically. But who knows, right? I mean, who knows?
We had all options covered.
Yeah.
And she came in, and she was absolutely brilliant. So her first slide. So we got a bit of media interest this stage. The Daily Mail loved Hurlingham, and there were a couple of kind of unsavoury headlines that we copped.
Yeah, you sent me the articles. Actually, I was like, this is remarkable.
Unbelievable. And her first slide, she put up some of these headlines and just spoke to them, and she had everybody roaring with laughter, and she won that crowd over, and it was one of the highlights of the year, and she was brilliant. And for me, the best bit is the chairman of House. He'd been a little bit. He'd been supportive, but he wasn't like I'm not a huge fan. So with the seating plans, of course, I didn't put him next to her.
Yeah,
and then
sensible.
After the dinner, then after the speech, I went through to the table and seen that the seating plan had mysteriously been changed. I was like, oh my goodness, he's next to her. And he came up rather coyly and said, Claire, I'm really sorry about that. That was me. I've changed the seating plan. I think I've fallen a little bit in love with her. And that is just the biggest praise I could have had. But it was
totally
a brilliant evening. But
what a marvelous story! What a marvelous story as well, because I mean, there's so much to unpack in that, which we won't do on this show. But even just the concept of the people need to get out of the way of their own perceptions of stuff, right? I mean, it's and who would, of all of the people in the world, you would expect that she must come up against that kind of stuff all the time, so she'd be well prepared for it. And
absolutely, she's a barrister, isn't she? I mean, she's, if anybody can talk to a difficult audience, she absolutely showed that in spades. She was brilliant, and she worked that audience. Respect to her. It was a fantastic evening, a memorable evening.
Yeah, superb. Yeah. I love stories like that. I really do. I think they're also what give this industry so much of its color, right? I mean, you do something with amazingly positive intention. And who'd have thought that you get this furore around,
absolutely, and I wasn't expecting it to be headlines on national papers. It's like, okay, but they were very supportive, and it just shows the power of having the support of your kind of the senior management at the time behind you. It's like they were unwavering in their support. It's like, right, we've got this, we're a team. Just shows how important that
absolutely.
is.
What's the phrase? Any publicity is good publicity. So
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that about Hurling, but yes, in theory, yes.
Yeah, excellent. Right. So now you're off to Hong Kong, and notwithstanding one of the most internationally recognizable club names I think that probably exists. I'm trying to think of any others that might trump it. I mean, it's definitely up there for sure. I'd say as being one of the highest profile, well-known clubs in the world.
What an extraordinary organisation the Hong Kong Jockey Club is, and what it does for Hong Kong, and the support it gives to Hong Kong and to the government. It's an organisation like no other, and a privilege to be a part of. And in terms of their kind of, I was a very small cog in a very, very big wheel out there. But in terms of the support and the leadership training and the opportunities that they give their staff, it was an incredible experience. Unfortunately, Hong Kong at the time was going through quite a difficult period, and I was there at the time of the started riotings, and there was the change of the kind of judicial law with Carrie Lam, and some of my team got involved in some of the rioting, and we just felt for us with a young family, my husband, we were closer to China, so we weren't on, we're in the new territories, so we weren't on the main island, so a little bit hard for my husband to find work. So we just felt for us as a family, we love being in Asia, but perhaps there was maybe a slightly more suitable environment for us at the time.
Right.
So I was lucky enough then to get a job over in Singapore, working for the Dutch club over there. So then we decided then to hop across over to Singapore and carry on our Asian adventure. I think, once you've extracted yourself from the UK as a family, that's a big deal. Very hard to have it'd been a bit of a shame as well, I suppose, to have come straight back. So actually, let's carry on the adventure. And we're all up for travelling. And
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
So Singapore, what a very, very different experience that was. What an amazing region, and just so beautifully managed. I don't know if you've been over to Singapore as well.
Two of those places you've just mentioned were two of my favourite places to go when I was working on ships, because they're just so otherworldly. I found from my experience of being in the UK, and everything's lovely and understated. And then you go to places like Hong Kong, and they're just in your face, and Singapore is just beautifully immaculate,
isn't it?
Yeah, it's just
such
they're
easy
amazing
living.
places.
We found Hong Kong very, very culturally rich, and then Singapore very, very easy living as a Western European family. And everybody spoke English. Everybody has helpers. As a young family, that was just a godsend.
Yeah.
Both of us trying to work as well. So hopped over to Singapore, 2019, full of excitement, and then of course COVID hit. It's like, gosh, what a time and what an experience then. So trying to manage the club through COVID, and of course the nature of that particular club is very, very transient. So of course when you've got people can't come in and can't leave, that membership then is very, very challenged to kind of upkeep. So a lot learned through trying to keep that club afloat through Singapore during COVID.
And how was it how was COVID managed in Singapore?
Extremely tightly, I think is fair to say.
That doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me.
Yes, we were very, very controlled.
A lot of laws there, haven't they?
We were very, very well controlled, and I think that the difference there is, as an expat working in Singapore, you have to have your visa to work there, so you have to have your right to work, and that essentially the government has got control over you because of your right to work. So of course, if you misbehave, you lose your right to work, so they send you home. So they've got this kind of grip on you. But it felt, to be honest, it felt very, very safe. We felt very well looked after. Yes, it was quite safe. Distancing regulations during COVID was quite challenging to manage. So we kind of went, had 2 people to a table or 4 people to a table, and so many meters between guests, and trying to run the pool and trying to run the sun lounges, people to wear masks beside the pool. Some of the measures were quite draconian, but then we did feel safe. And when we looked at the UK looked very naughty by comparison in terms of what was happening in Singapore. We felt extremely safe.
Well, that's Boris Johnson for you, isn't it? That's
yeah.
Yeah, but and isn't it funny though? Again, here we are, different perceptions, right? Because I'm guessing us here in the UK, we were probably thinking, well, this is so bloody frustrating, But in actual fact, it sounds like we had it all right, actually.
It depends. It's the lens you look through, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so true of life, isn't it? And from our particular lens, where we were very, very well looked after and very controlled, we knew exactly what we could do and where we could go and how we could go. And look at the UK, and it just seemed it was still so free. And with that, at that time, I guess because of COVID, a little bit unsafe, I guess.
Right.
From our very secure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, plus you talk about, I suppose, the specificity of having very clear guidelines and sets of rules. I think that was probably something that the UK didn't have. I mean, who remembers the tiering system, right? And who can still fully decipher that? There were rules in play, but they were loose and very much open to interpretation, I think.
Oh, okay. There was none of that in Singapore. It was black and white. We knew exactly what we could and couldn't do. Absolutely, yeah, very controlled. Again, another kind of, if you were going to be stuck in anywhere during COVID, actually Singapore wasn't a bad place to be, And I think we had about 5 weeks of being kind of intensely locked down, where we couldn't leave the house apart from maybe one person could go and get some food, or maybe go for a run or a walk. And so we had a little paddling pool. It's like we couldn't get access to our pool at the time, so we had a little paddling pool, and we had a little bit of concrete in front of the house. So it's like, well, there you are, that's the kids' pool, and we just kind of made do. Just got on and made the best of it. And
absolutely,
we have quite happy memories of that time. Albeit I was quite busy at work as we were trying to retain members as fast as we could. But,
But that once again speaks to that adaptability of us, right? I mean, nobody can plan something like that and how you respond to something like that. A lot of how we were behaving in that time was completely reactive to what was happening to us or whatever. And like you say, I remember the first day of we're going to be locked down. I remember being a little bit excited, and I'm really almost ashamed to say that out loud, but because I thought to myself, well, this is new. Like, what do we do? You know, this is, and I actually, the first thing that kicked into my head was, oh, the business challenge. I'm going to get some learning out of this. This is amazing. That didn't last very long, I have to say. I think literally 24 hours later, I was like, oh my God, what's happened? But equally, it does, especially now we can all look back at it. We can look back and go, you know, we did adapt. We had no choice, right? So
Completely.
you have to adapt to
And
what's happening.
it's like, look at us now on Teams and working from home, and it's just changed. It has
Recording
advanced
virtual
society
podcasts.
completely. And the way that we do business, and just that flexibility now to work from home. And I think it's just it's hurried life on, hasn't it, at a incredible pace compared to, I think, what would have happened naturally. So
Yeah, absolutely.
very interesting.
Yeah, I think it also reminded us, whether we've remembered this now, but it reminded us all what's really, really important. And I think actually from that perspective, it probably served a really interesting purpose. But then we've all just gotten back to getting busy again, right? So you just adapt again and we get on with it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So true. But I think it was to that end, actually. It's like once COVID had opened up, unfortunately I lost my mum during COVID, so I couldn't get back to the UK. So that was really challenging. And then my husband lost his dad, so it's like, there were some challenges, of course, when we couldn't get back. But then it was, the opportunity came up to come back, and my mother-in-law at this point then wasn't well, and it's like, actually, let's remember what is important, and let's come back now to the family. So it just felt right. So as soon as everything opened up, then my husband came back. So he came back then for 6 months and was then with his mum. And because I had a helper, because that was, one of the joys of being in Singapore, is like I could carry on working full time with the girls, and he could come back. Yeah, so I think absolutely it was kind of remember what's important. So he's so glad he came back, and actually then he got to spend kind of 6 months living with her, which he hadn't done since he was a boy. So, I think to that end, that's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Singapore journey came to a conclusion with the advent of this role that you're now in. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, actually. So we'd made the decision to come back. I was recruiting for other roles, and literally I was like, we can't come straight back to England, never having been to Malaysia. Malaysia was literally 10 minutes away from my club. So it's like, and because everything had opened up, it's like, right, let's go and spend 4 or 5 weeks just traveling, and then we'll come back. So we sent our stuff on the ship home, and we then took the opportunity as a family to go and explore a bit of Malaysia and pop back into Vietnam, and just had a bit of adventure, and then came back. And it was actually as we were on our way back, then I was approached about this role, and I thought, well, it came as a very general email, and I was like, okay, let's just see what it's about. And then when I heard it was Lensbury, it was like, oh my goodness, that of all the clubs I would love to come and be a part of, this is it. So
Really? Right.
again, it was, when I was at Hurlium, you have an eye on clubs that are on the Thames, because I think they offer such a unique proposition to a lot of the other kind of city clubs. It was like, gosh, and I'd heard roughly of Lensbury, and at the time it was under Shell ownership. So then when I found out that this job was up for grabs, again, reached out to the MD at the time, which I think is great, and just try and find out a little bit more about the job. And yeah, so here I am. So I was back in the UK for 4 weeks, and then started here in July.
Yeah, well,
2022.
There we are, and the rest is history, as they say. But I'm obviously not going to let you off the hook that easily. So talk to me about then the history of the Lensbury, because it's not a property that I had on my radar until it was acquired. I can't even remember when. 5, 6, 7.
2019, yeah,
Was it?
2019 by Eleanor.
Yeah.
So Lensbury is the former Shell Training and Conference Centre. So it was built around the 1920s, and various extensions, conference centre added on in the 1970s. I understand it was the kind of the global headquarters for Shell, and they did all of their, all of their employees would stay here. I think it was a bit of a value add to being a Shell employee as well, that they got rights to come and use Lensbury, but it was their, I guess, fallback position, I guess, if something happened in central London. And they did all of their training and conferences through here. Shell then opened it up to members in '99, so that they had touched on membership, so there were members here, I think, when L&R took it on. And Shell also were very, very pro sport. There's a lovely sporting heritage with Lensbury. And I've read that, the Shell trainees, when they were brought on, they had to be very, very good sportsmen. So they kept that very high level of sporting skill alive through their employees. It was a very big community club with some great facilities. And they've got incredible photos here of, I think, here they used to be the pre-Wimbledon qualifiers for the tennis. We've got some incredible history here with old tennis rackets throughout Lensbury, as well as some sporting legends across rugby. So I had a nice relationship with the RFU. So England Rugby were here as well. And so when L&R took Lensbury on in 2019, we're very, very clear that that's something we absolutely want to continue at Lensbury. So the elite sports bit is just another string to the bow here. So this is, I've never been at a facility quite like this. So we are a private members club. We have approximately 7,000 members. We are a conference and training centre. We have a 155-room hotel. And then we have 24 tennis courts in the ground and a sports health and leisure complex with a spa and indoor pools and studios. And we have 2 elite sports pitches. So one is a 5-star rated pitch. So that attracts some very, very high-profile sportsmen and women here. And we're very proud of that. So when I arrived, literally within 5 days of me arriving, we had the Lionesses came to stay, and this was during the Euros in 2022, and they stayed with us unexpectedly then because they just did so well that they ended up staying with us throughout the entire time, and then of course they won the Euros in 22, and we ended up hosting their final party here, and that was never part of the plan because they were supposed to be moving to another venue, but they were so settled here, they were so happy here. It was just such a lovely vibe, and we like to call it Lucky Lensbury, that they stayed here throughout, and it's just the start of a lovely relationship here, and something we're very proud of at Lensbury to have these teams coming through, and long may that continue into the future.
Yeah, no doubt. And at Lucky Lensbury, I'm assuming your marketing team can get right on board with that message.
I was a bit careful, but generally yes.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of upsets, in the past, but generally, no, absolutely, and there's nowhere quite like here where teams have got access to a pitch and a hotel, and then of course you've got the Thames. So we found with all the teams coming here, there's very, very intense physical training, but then they've got the opportunity to go on the boat, certainly in the summer, and they go and they play on the water, or they can do dragon boat racing. And it's just that mindfulness bit as well, because of where we are, they have access to so many different things just within the close proximity. And then Teddington High Street, a touch of normality, is just 5 minutes away. So you definitely need to come, fellas. It's incredible.
Indeed, had my workload not been so mental, I would have, yeah, for sure. But no, because I think as well the positioning of it is, I mean, you can't really get much better than a water-fronted position, can you? It's just, I don't know what it is, but there's just something really lovely about it.
Yeah, no, it's magical. It's magical. And we're opposite Teddington Lock here as well. So it's very big, kind of prestigious facility, I guess, opposite us as well. So yeah, it's beautiful, and opposite Hamland. So it's just a really lovely area of kind of Greater London.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very, very lucky.
Yeah. So are you fully private, or are you open to the general public in any form?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've just done a big rebranding exercise actually, and the tagline that we've come up is kind of openly exclusive. So yes, we are open to conference delegates, to hotel guests, but obviously it's a private members club. So when the hotel guests or conference delegates stay with us, they only stay with us through the fact that they're staying with us as a conference delegate or in the hotel. So they get day use to the facilities. Otherwise, you couldn't come in off the high street and come and use Lensbury.
Yeah. Got you.
At the moment. So it's been quite an interesting one as we kind of look at how we marry the brand and the strategy together in terms of where we're going, because we want you to feel at home, whether you are a member here or whether you're a hotel guest for a night or a couple of nights, or you're here on a training course for a week. So I think it was quite an interesting exercise for us to go through, to kind of just make sure that we are appealing and meeting the needs of all the different segments that we host here at Lensbury.
Yeah, and I suppose that's a key thing of any business, I guess, but is the evolution of who you are and what you stand for, and what are you to the guests that come through the door, etc., etc. So give us an idea of what's coming next. Where's the evolution going for the Lensbury at this point in time?
So first thing kind of coming in then was agreeing the strategy and where we're headed, and part of that was the members here are the bedrock of Lensbury. They're absolutely core to everything that we do. So the first thing that we've done as a hotel group is we've invested in the members' lounge. So we have somewhere now. It's a beautiful space. So it was a room that we weren't using very much. It's been beautifully done, and it's an exclusive members' lounge, and in there they've got their own. We're very much gone down the very healthy, well-being, good, nice healthy salads, smoothies offering. So it ties in very nicely with our kind of sporting heritage as a kind of athletic, healthy club. So that's the first kind of big development that we've done. I think when I first arrived, I couldn't really tell in the F&B areas that where are the members and where are the hotel guests and who's here on a conference. But now we've just given them that platform, and it's like, actually, we really value you. You've got your own distinct area, and I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that we've done. So we put the members first there, and then we are hoping towards the end of this year, early next, that we will then do the next set of renovations. So we're looking at the wider F&B area, and we'll try and do that in a similar vein to what we've done already. And then we've got the hotel room. So big project, big renovation plans afoot. Along with, I'm hoping we will get planning any day now for paddle courts over the road. So just been working with the council on additional paddle courts and redoing the thermal suite. So we've kind of got day-to-day projects going on as well as kind of wider renovation projects afoot. So a very, very exciting time for Lensbury, and we're very clear with the team is, everybody's got to kind of get on the bus. It's like we're on a journey, and you've got to have people that it's not plain sailing. We're putting in new systems. We're really taking Lensbury forward, and we want everybody now that has got to be part of this team as we just drive Lensbury forward for kind of next 5-10 years. So.
Yeah, God, yeah. It is exciting. I'm on board. Absolutely. Just a shame that I live in Essex instead of where you are. But,
wrong side.
No, I mean, it always also sounds a little bit like kind of all roads have led you here. Like you were almost destined to be here at this time doing this thing.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like that, actually. When I talk to people about the role, they're like, "Oh my goodness, there couldn't be a better job for you." It's like, maybe you're right. I've learned a huge amount now. I come from a traditional kind of equity members club background, and of course here with the elite sports and the hotel guests and conference centre, there's an awful lot to learn, and it's a commercial club, it's not an equity club, so it's been a steep learning curve. And I think having a brilliant team around me to kind of we kind of leverage off each other to try and take Lensbury forward is really powerful. But it's challenging, it's exciting, it's rewarding. No 2 days are the same. I think when I get home at night, I think that's what I love about the hospitality industry, is that here there's an awful lot going anyway because of everything that we're doing, but just in the hospitality industry generally, it's just no 2 days the same. And I get home, my husband works in finance. I think he kind of wants to live vicariously through what's happening through my job because it's so exciting.
Yeah. That finance boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just going to pick up on something you said earlier on in the conversation, which was always that you felt like you were, I don't know if these were the exact words, but you always felt like you were destined for hospitality. Why do you think that is? What about it kind of pulled you in?
I guess I'm a people person, and I get energy off people, and there are few environments where actually that people engagement bit and having fun, I'm naturally a very positive person, like to create great experiences for people, and I think that absolutely goes hand in hand with hospitality. I think it's caring. I think it's about having standards, and it's making a difference. And I think hospitality gives you such a great platform to do that. With some very simple changes, you can make a huge difference to somebody's experience. And again, it's very quick to do. You can turn a situation around really quickly just with some very, very simple things. And I think maybe in other industries that's not quite so easy. And I think I quite like that almost instant gratification, if you like, with some little things that you can do in this industry that perhaps a bit more challenging in other industries.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm conscious of the fact this sounds like it's a job interview now, not a podcast interview.
But Richard, get the job, that's fine.
Yeah. We'll come back to you. Which actually probably leads me on to the one of the questions that I have started to ask, because I find this one fascinating as a recruiter myself, and I have a fairly formulaic way of speaking to people, which is really just to get them speaking about themselves. That's kind of the joy of what I do, I suppose. But what's the best interview question that you've ever been asked? And if you can't remember what it is, I have it written down.
Yeah, I was asked, actually, it was my interview for Hurlingham, funny enough. I was asked, if you came back as an animal, what animal would you be? And I thought long and hard about this, and I think I gave probably a very safe answer, my answer was a Labrador.
Do you know, I had dog in my head. That's the first place I go to, maybe just because I'm a proper
Interesting.
dog
I went more
person,
specific because, I think, terrier to a Labrador. So I went very specific, and I went Labrador because I think I was going for the kind of the loyal, the bright, safe pair of hands, trainable, so that was, but I wonder, was that the most dynamic of answers? I got the job, I guess, so they weren't scared by the answer, but it'll do. But I wonder if there's maybe a more exciting answer out there, but that's the answer I went. But it has given me, and I do reflect on that.
Is it a question that you now ask when you're interviewing people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it? Right.
Gives very interesting answers.
There's always little quirky questions that can be asked just to maybe catch people off guard, but also kind of it gives you a window into the soul of the individual, doesn't it, in terms of what they really stand for and what's important to them. I always had dog in my head because I'm in awe of dogs' ability to live in the moment. I think they're they love unconditionally, and they are positive, and they're let's do this, and I think I relate to that, and they're just full of kindness. They're just
I'm pleased to see you. Whatever's happened, they're pleased to see you. Unconditional love. You have to do that.
Yeah. But you're right. That it's maybe a vanilla answer. Maybe there's something way more exciting.
I think so. I know. I'll keep
golden eagle.
Exactly.
I love to soar above everyone else. But anyway, people answer. Send in your own answers for that one, if that is something that we even do on this show. I don't know, but maybe we are now. No, that's great. I mean, what a great journey you've had to this point. Notwithstanding, I think I'm always really fascinated when other industries come into hospitality. I also think that it's something that we need to be way better at than we currently are in terms of inviting people from other sectors in to come and consider a career in this industry, because I think this industry teaches you so much, but also we can learn so much from other industries, right? And I'd look at your time in the army and what that must have done for you in terms of your grounding, your values, your discipline, and all of the things that we, I suppose, stereotypically think of when it comes to the armed forces. But why not, right? I mean, we should be the most open industry in the history of the world, because we're literally dealing with every possible human being type that exists under the sun.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that was my battle cry for anybody who cares. But no, look, thank you so much for your time. I love your story. I'm really excited to see what happens next at the Lensbury. I will definitely make time to come and see you and get the proper tour, as it were, to get a real mental image in my head as to what you're getting up to. But it sounds really, really exciting, and the direction of travel sounds completely enthralling.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. And there we have it, a quite fabulous journey so far from Claire with some amazing stories. I also love the comparison between skills learned in the army and hospitality, a match made in heaven. We'll be back as usual next Wednesday at 8 PM, so have a great week, and I'll see you then.